Welcome back to Gold Standard Culture. I'm Chris.
I'm Dominic.
This is the Culture Cast. This is our NBA podcast here on Gold Standard Culture. Dominic's a part of In the Moment Hoops, also in YouTube. His link will be in the description, so if you want to check out his stuff, that'll be linked below. The playlist for this podcast will be linked below, updated regularly. So if you want to go check that out, cover all things basketball, go ahead and take a look. Bucks firing head coach Adrian Griffin, rookie head coach. Obviously, a lot of that's a lot of pressure for a guy coming in. The Bucks are in more of a win now mode than they probably have ever been under Giannis, who's kind of felt like this summer was getting to the point of like no return, where the idea of Giannis leaving Milwaukee seemed pretty close. And obviously, they made the move to bring in Damian Lillard, and then subsequently hired Adrian Griffin and Terry Stotts, who had previously head coached for Damian Lillard, which was, probably to help Dame out a little bit. But uh, let's get right into that. How do you feel about the firing? What do you think it was right? Do you think maybe they a little too quick triggered?
I definitely think they jumped the gun a bit. And I think that, yes, like we were mentioning, it was a little evident the defense was not what it has been the last few years. By no means has it been the same whatsoever. But like we also said, they don't have the right personnel at times. Definitely think it was a bit interesting to go that route. And then you end up signing someone else in in the likes of Doc Rivers. So
Yeah.
I definitely think it's an interesting route they went for sure. And I'm not going to say they're going to regret this because we haven't seen a game yet. But it's just like I definitely think they jumped the gun a bit because with David Blatt from the Cavaliers,
Yeah.
a year and a half already, I believe. It wasn't
Yeah.
40 games. Like it was so quick. It was so short-lived and I feel like they didn't even attempt to try to fix the problems where they were. And I mean, I thought it was a little quick, but that's my thought process on that.
Yeah, I normally I think I'd agree, but you mentioned it too. It's the personnel, they just don't really have the wing depth
Yeah.
and point of attack defense they did with Drew Holiday. And they've, many big name, NBA media have talked about it. It's like, Drew Holiday's not solving all the problems for the Bucks. Sure, that's fair, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Helps you.
I think many teams are
Yeah.
sitting here just like we need point of attack defense, and the difference is most teams that need point of attack defense have the assets to go out and get that. The Bucks
Yeah.
don't.
They don't.
They don't
No.
have draft picks. They really don't have young players. It's like at this point, trading Marjon Beauchamp, is that going to help you too much? I mean, Beauchamp's not the best, but Beauchamp's a solid role player for them.
Yeah.
Are you trading Andre Jackson, who's been probably your best perimeter defender besides Giannis? I don't
Yeah.
think so. They just don't really have much to move. So I feel like for them, firing Adrian Griffin was sort of like the only arrow in their quiver, so to speak. So
Yeah.
I get it from that perspective. But yeah, obviously Adrian Griffin, rookie head coach, coming from being an assistant with Toronto. That
Wow.
was, I mean, he was pretty well regarded there as an
Yeah.
assistant. Toronto obviously is kind of just that, wing heavy team, and that's the scheme that Adrian Griffin was trying to implement with Milwaukee. But as we know, guys like Brook Lopez nearing 40 years old, Bobby Portis as a center, Giannis, big guy. The Bucks made their name for so many years with that paint defense. It was just one of those teams where you couldn't get anything at the rim. And that was what made them so difficult, pairing with the fact that you had a perimeter defender like Drew Holiday, who
Yeah.
can, essentially guard a team's best point guard or shooting guard. It was just a really tough defense to play against. But, uh, you know, Adrian Griffin came in. His scheme was to have everybody jump cut and try and, force turnovers, but that just didn't work. And, the stats kind of show it for the first time. I don't even know the last time they had a defensive rating this bad. I don't think they had one this bad under Budenholzer, but right now, sitting 20th in defensive rating, 24th in opponent fast break points, and 25th in opponent points in the paint. Which, when you think about that,
That's
that's
crazy.
all you need to see is
Yeah.
a team with Giannis, Brook Lopez, who was, I mean, probably should have been Defensive Player of the Year last season,
Make an argument
and,
for that. Sure.
and Bobby Portis. and they're 25th in points in the paint. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And one of the biggest things that I've seen, articles that I've read, podcasts that I've watched of analysts talking about this. It's like Giannis, Damian Lillard, Brooke Lopez, all these guys just completely lost faith in Adrian Griffin. Completely lost faith in him. Like Giannis was out here changing plays on his own, like audibling himself, just ignoring substitution patterns because he didn't agree with what Griffin was doing. And anytime you see that, that's bad.
That's very
That's a head coach losing the locker room, and
yeah.
again, that kind of lends to the point of like, there's no point in keeping him here. Like it's just everybody's pissed. It's not working. Um, and I agree with you that like, is Doc Rivers going to help?
See the answer? We don't know.
You know, is he
Yeah.
going to help? I don't think so. Can he get much worse? I don't think so. I think it's
Yeah.
just going to be
Similar
coasting.
situation. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
as long as you have Giannis, chances are you're going to at least make the playoffs. They're already second place. Like,
Yeah.
don't worry about them. They'll be fine. But
Yeah.
it's about in the playoffs, do they crumble again? But no, one of the big things that always like got to me was what happened with Terry Stotts before the season even started. Again, Terry Stotts came in for Damian Lillard to kind of help that transition for him. And Terry Stotts, was Terry Stotts ever that great of a head coach? Probably not,
Yeah.
probably in that lower B range of coaching, but still a pretty smart mind, offensive guy.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
as all coaching staffs do, there's butting heads of philosophy and, who knows what can we implement? How can we work together? And it just sounds like Adrian Griffin's ego was way, way too big, and just clashing with assistant coaches to the point where Terry Stotts just resigned before the
Yeah.
season even started, which you just don't see. I don't see that. I don't think I've ever seen that where, you
Can't say I
know,
have either. Yeah.
right when they hire a dude, oh, now he's gone because he's
Yeah.
like, I'm not working with this guy.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, how do you feel about, potentially Adrian Griffin as a coach moving forward? Do you think any of this stuff is going to really come back to bite him, or is this sort of like a, wrong fit kind of thing?
I would say more so a wrong fit, like you were mentioning with the stats you were providing me before with the Raptors, and they have a very wing-heavy defense. They're one of the
Yeah,
best teams at guarding the three. The Bucks for the last few years, their bread and butter was allowing the most threes. They were always defending the paint. They were the best paint defense in the league almost every year, year and out. They gave up
yeah,
the most threes for sure. Toronto, the complete opposite. They would always defend the most threes, and they were the best guarding the three. Now, it's a different type of philosophy in Milwaukee, and the person Milwaukee has, it's heavy rim protection, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if Doc Rivers understands that and he changes that a bit. I would imagine Milwaukee goes back to a relatively solid defense, but like we've mentioned, their personnel is pretty bad defensively as of right now. And Andre Jackson, like you said, has been their best perimeter defender. It's hard to play with him and Giannis because at the same time, questionable offense
both
from
non-shooters.
yeah,
Yeah,
very questionable offense from those two. But I would imagine that Adrian Griffin moves forward. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back on that Nick Nurse staff up in Philly in a few. I really wouldn't
Mm,
be surprised. He was there. I think he was with Nick Nurse the whole time he was in Toronto, right? Like,
something like that. Yeah, he was there for a while.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't be really surprised if you were to go back on that Nick Nurse coaching staff because Nick Nurse is doing a hell of a job right now in Philly. So I wouldn't be really shocked if I saw something along the lines of that. But yeah, as far as head coaching goes and hearing all the stuff about him so far, yeah, it might be a little bit of a stain on his resume going forward.
yeah. It's all sports when it comes to head coaching, managing, all that stuff. We forget that the we're you're essentially putting the egos and identities of some of the best athletes in the world in the hands of one guy. And,
Exactly.
managing that is very difficult.
Hard. Yeah.
It's not like football where there's like 60 guys per roster, where
Yeah.
that's just like, if you're able to manage that and be a good coach of the NFL, that's pretty crazy because that's so
Yeah.
much you have to deal with. But NBA still, it's like, Giannis, he does things a certain way. Damian Lillard does things a certain way. Adrian Griffin does things his own way. So it's like, if those things don't mesh, or if there can't be a sort of common ground met of like respect and, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Let's try and, maybe mesh what we're thinking into one thing, it's going to be a really rough go of things. And we've seen that plenty of times in the NBA where you get just, one-off stints like this where it's like, maybe Adrian Griffin's like, yeah, being a head coach ain't for me.
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
better as an assistant. I could lean more into my strength. We see it, guys like Kenny Atkinson, who was a great coach with the Nets,
Yeah.
but and is interviewed a couple times, but has really stayed back to continue
Five
being
as
an
an assistant.
assistant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So some guys just, probably excel better in lesser roles, and that's perfectly fine. So,
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully, Adrian Griffin ends up, kind of finding his footing back in the league again. I think he should. He probably will.
Yeah.
But like you said, wouldn't shock me if it's with Nick Nurse up in Philly.